Life is unpredictable, but how you prepare for the unexpected shouldn't be. Take ownership of your life planning with Policy Genius to help your loved ones have a financial safety net in case something happens to you. Whether to cover debts and routine expenses or even invest the money and earn interest over time. With Policy Genius, finding and buying life insurance is simple. You can compare quotes from top insurers and could find coverage that fits your needs and your budget. Plus, they offer life insurance policies starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in coverage. It's an easy way to feel good about and plan for the future. No wonder Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. Don't wait for life to make other plans. Protect your family today. Head to policygenius.com to compare top-rated life insurance policies, get your lowest quote, and make a smart move in under 10 minutes. That's policygenius.com.
He's an ex-police officer in the state of Colorado. He was in a police-involved shooting. He was arrested, convicted of second-degree murder, and spent 8 years incarcerated. He's here to tell us all about it on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. You know, we used to have an app, and it was a very popular app. And then, guess what? We couldn't hold a candle to our Facebook presence. How many people have the mobile Facebook app already installed on their phone? How many people use it on their computer? Make sure you follow us. Make sure you like us on our Facebook page. Just search for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast, and be sure to send us a comment to one of the posts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Joining us on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is James Ashby. James is an ex-police officer, and I'll clarify what that means. You get to decide, ex or former, when you hear his story. James was a police officer in Colorado. He was arrested for a second-degree murder during a police-involved shooting, doing his job. He was prosecuted for second-degree murder. He was found guilty. He was incarcerated 8 years in prison. He's currently in a halfway house, and he's here to tell us his whole story. James, thanks for being a guest on the show. Very much appreciated.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and if I could have a second to thank you for your time. You're the first person who gave me a platform and a chance to tell my story, and, you know, it really does mean a lot to me, so thank you.
Well, the good thing is this. There's so many stories out there. They're not being told. And I'll say this. There's two things I want to cover. Number one, policing in general has relied on the news media to tell their stories for far too long. And they've always done a bad job, a really bad job. Now they're so biased in certain areas that it doesn't even closely resemble the truth. And the only way to get to some semblance of truth is for people to tell their story and provide their platform. Secondly, there's very few things I will correct people about. When they say I'm ex-police, I go, no, I'm retired police. I got hurt and retired young at the age of 33. There's ex, meaning you left in and I'm air quoting, dishonorable circumstances, either being resigned, fired, doesn't matter what it was. You've got former, left of their own accord, and in good circumstances, and retired, either did it full time or they left for whatever reason, usually health-related issues. So when I say X, because that's the term that fits, you get to decide, the listeners, whether James is a former police officer or an ex-officer. I want to go to, before we go into the nuts and bolts of your story, James, just tell us what happened.
So it was mid-October 2014. You know, we'd received a bunch of phone calls, and one in particular about a man trying to break into a female's home. We responded. The female gave us a description of the suspect. You know, he wasn't on the premises. He wasn't in the immediate area. So I went about my night. I picked up a ride-along around midnight and was kind of showing a younger potential future officer what it was like to be an officer. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, we're traveling westbound on Highway 50, and I observed a male who fit the description. I pulled alongside him, tried to talk to him, tried to say, hey, come here, man, talk to me. Continued to refuse. So I went to contact him, activated my lights, went to contact him. And when he saw me activate the lights, he picked up a skateboard and kind of immediately headed right towards some hedges. I exited the vehicle and I was like, hey, come here and talk to me. He continued to refuse, and he starts to separate farther from me. He gets to this back porch of this door, and he just turns around and mule kicks, just starts kicking this door. I don't know what's going on. I get up to him. This entire time he's been reaching in this bag for some type of an object. I get up to the back, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And around this time, I can see somebody come to the door. And it's a smaller woman. She opens the door, and she kind of looks at him, and he goes, what are you doing here? And right at this time, he hits me with this skateboard. I'm trying to handcuff him. He starts pulling me into the home. I'm tugging on him. I don't know what's going on. We get inside. I'm still wrestling with him. I deploy my pepper spray on him, and as the pepper spray hits him, it bounces off kind of the side of his face, and it goes onto this woman. And I remember looking to the right, and I remember looking and thinking, oh, I just got pepper spray on this poor woman. I remember kind of that initial, oh, I feel bad about this. And then I could hear movement back to my left. So as I went back to my left to look towards where he was, I could no longer see him. And then I observed what appeared to be almost like a lighter colored object moving through the air. And I didn't know what it was. And it was going up in like an arcing motion. And as it got about, a couple feet off the ground, I could hear it hit something metal. And the second it hit this object, it ended up being a tool case. The second it hit it, I knew instantly it was a baseball bat. And I could see it winding up, and he was winding up like he was spinning to strike me with the bat. I jumped back. I hollered, drop the bat. I fired my weapon. He fell. I called for backup. I called for an ambulance. I ran to my patrol car. I grabbed my med bag. The ride-along was like, what happened? I said, I need my med bag. I ran back inside with my med bag. And as I returned to the home, the lights were on. The females, there was another one in the back of the home. They were both giving us they're both giving me a very strange, odd look. I noticed that the baseball bat was gone. And there was this brief moment where I was like, I don't understand what just happened. My brain couldn't, everything was happening so fast that I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I remember just thinking to myself, no, just help him. Just help him. We'll worry about everything else later. So I began to render aid. And as I'm rendering aid, this female kept looking to a room. And I kept asking her, where's the bat? And she would say, there is no bat. And she would deflect and look to what would be her left. And she continued to do this multiple times. And then it clicked, and I said, oh, you hid the bat. And she shakes her head, yes, I hid the bat. Around this time, the other officers arrived. Dispatch told me ambulance was on its way. So I told the other arriving officers, hey, handcuff him. They moved the weapon. It's in the house somewhere. I believe she said it's in the bedroom. So they handcuff him. They bring him outside. Paramedics and fire take over the suspect. And we go and look, and we find the baseball bat in the bedroom, and with about 8 inches of it sticking out from underneath these blankets. So I say, okay, well, hey, there's other officers here. Policy is that I leave the scene because it's going to be an investigation. I went outside. I handed my duty weapon and everything to the arriving sergeant.
Right.
And he said, okay, sit down. And that was the end of that night. And it wasn't but a couple hours later, the media was reporting I don't understand where they were getting their information from, because nobody had even spoken with CBI yet. CBI wasn't even on on the scene, and they were already
Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
Yes.
Okay.
So they hadn't even arrived on scene yet, and there was already media reports out there of and just the way the media reported it was very unfair. They never got my side of the story. They never even attempted to get my side of the story.
We're going to take a short break there and return our conversation with James Ashby. And I would say this, the media doesn't care about our story. If they did, they don't care about presenting facts. They are concerned with getting attention so they can sell more advertising. We're talking about James Ashby. He's an ex-police officer in Colorado. He was arrested, convicted, incarcerated for 8 years for second-degree murder, and find him on Facebook. Look for Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. Here's another location where you can find all kinds of news for free. That's medium.com, spelled medium.com. Look for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast profile on the Medium app and follow it. It's just Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. So much more to talk about. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. If you do any business on social media, creating content is one thing. The trick is, how do you turn those people that comment on your social media into consumers? There's a great tool, and you can get more information at letpops.com. That's letpops.com. Best of all, you can start it for free. letpops.com. Check it out today.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Return our conversation with James Ashby. He is a ex-police officer from Colorado. He was in an officer-involved shooting, which we'll return our conversation in a few moments. He was arrested, charged, convicted for second-degree murder as a result of this. He's sentenced to 8 years in prison. He's currently in a halfway house in Colorado. You can find him on Facebook. Just look for Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. That's Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. And you can find James and his story right there. James, before we went to break, you're talking about, first of all, I've been in 4 shootings in 11 years in the Baltimore Police Department, and not one of them was like the media portrays. As a matter of fact, the first 2, I never fired a shot back. Second 2 were totally different affairs, but thank God everybody lived. When we went to break, this guy was in bad shape. They were rendering aid, but he did not live.
No, sir, he did not.
And that right there is something I don't know of any police. I've never met any police officer that wants to take a life, ever.
No, I still get emotional about it now. It was such a traumatic event already. Then the protesters came, the rioters came, and I was basically just told, hey, you're not safe in the city. You need to leave. So I had to leave my home. Luckily I had family nearby that took care of me and helped, thinking like, is this, what do I go from here? What happens now? I mean, the department never offered psychological help. They never offered a therapist, nothing. They just said, hey man, the stuff is going on. You should probably leave. Like, this isn't safe for you to be here. So I left, continued to cooperate with the investigation, and did my interviews, did my walkthroughs, and everything that I was supposed to do.
It's different in Maryland than it is in Colorado. But one of the things is that I tell police all the time, they're involved in shootings. You don't talk to anybody until you have an attorney with you.
Yes.
You let the facts speak for themselves, but you don't speak.
Right. Yeah, so I had my, Colorado CPPA lawyer. They did a great job. But really, I don't think that they realized or were prepared for the gains and the fallacies that were going to start coming out.
Yeah, I read some of those, James, and there's not a whole lot of information online, which I'm always speculative about. It's like, what are they trying to cover up? What are they trying to hide? But one of the things that repeatedly said was you're a rageaholic, and I've never gotten that impression from you.
No, that's one of the things that it still really bothers me is, so not even a year and a half before this, I was Officer of the Year Distinguished Lifesaver for the entire state of Colorado. 8 years honorable service in the Navy, 8 years or almost 8 years as a police officer. You know, I ran multiple foundations. So I raced motorcycles at a high level, and I always worked within my church and my community to do that. And the way that they portrayed me and twisted everything that had ever happened, there was a point in time where I had somebody come and tell me, hey, the media offered me money to tell a story about you. And I remember thinking it was one of those clues in the series of unfortunate events that happened in this, that I was like, oh man, this isn't fair. This isn't how, you know, this isn't what they told us was the justice system was. I remember just thinking there's external forces at play here, you know, that are not fair.
And so much of this is not fair. And by the way, I see a lot of this on Facebook. Just go to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page, follow us, and you'll see it. And by the way, James is prisoner of war on police Facebook page, and follow him as well. One of the things that I notice all the time that is, and maybe it started 10, 15 years ago, we used to always say in Baltimore, if it bleeds, it leads, especially with the print media. But news and television was the same way. Radio followed suit. And what they always wound up doing was talking about the police first. The police shot someone. Remember the 15 decisions the guy made beforehand that, usually based off self, that could have avoided all of that. First of all,
yes.
Was this guy the bad guy you were looking for?
Yeah, you know, we don't know. They've never really been able to determine that. They think maybe, possibly, but they don't know where his whereabouts were to the exact moment.
Okay.
But what I do know, and what I agree with your statement, is everybody said, well, why don't you tase him? Well, the agency couldn't afford tasers for everybody.
Right. And by the way, tasers don't work all the time.
Right. And that's what they said. Why don't you pepper spray him more?
One of the things I tell people all the time, and I policed way before tasers, and you said a couple of things. You said pepper spray. We had mace. And the rule was, from the old timers, never use mace because it only works on innocent bystanders and police. It never works on a bad guy.
Right.
So number one, you're going to be affected negatively. Number two, tasers fail about 40% of the time. If you are confronted with a deadly force situation and you go to a taser first and it does not work, then you're going to get severely injured. And when you talk about the baseball bat, first of all, there was a skateboard. A lot of people like, it's just a skateboard, no big deal. You try getting hit in the head with a piece of wood. It's got wheels on it and the trucks that go along with it. And there's a reason why some people call them deadly weapons. Then you had the baseball bat. So if you relied on a taser, correct me if I'm wrong, even if you had one, why would you go to that first?
Well, you know, it's odd that you mentioned that, is because that's one of the things that's a fallacy that they've said in my case, which is setting a very, very dangerous precedent. And I'm hoping that your platform can get this out and protect other officers in Colorado. One of the things that they said in my case when it comes to the weapon was that a baseball bat isn't a deadly weapon. They said, it's just a child's toy.
According to who? They're not the ones that get their head caved in by the baseball bat.
Well, you know, interesting too is they said at some point, well, you should have let him hit you and see if he was serious about it.
Yeah.
Which is
says someone has never been punched in the mouth.
Right. Well, then get this. So then after kind of more of the truth started coming out, one of the things that they then said in court, which is, I guess would be later down the conversation, was that, well, an officer in a lethal force situation has the duty to retreat. So according to them in trial, they said that when presented with a deadly object, my job as an officer is to inform the suspect, hey, I'm a police officer. I'm not here to harm you. I'm going to leave.
Were you in uniform?
In uniform.
So you already said that.
In a marked patrol car.
Right. So you already made that known that you're a marked police car in uniform.
Yep.
You're a police officer.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Well, according to them, though, this is what they said, that I then have to tell him, hey, I'm going to leave. And if I come back and you're still breaking into this home, you're still causing lethal force, then I'm going to use force against you. And they said that this was a blanket statement for everything from an active shooter to a traffic stop, according to them.
Where did they get that from? Because I don't know Colorado laws, but I've never heard that before, ever.
It's not a law. What it is it's an SOP, and in the SOP it says in a non-lethal environment, in a non-lethal situation, the officer should try to retreat to prevent violence. And then what their argument is that, well, it was non-lethal before it became lethal, right? But my argument is, well, why didn't he ever just stop and say, "Hey, officer, how can I help you?" Why did he flee? Why did he reach in his bag? Why was he trying to kick in a door? Why did he strike me with a skateboard? And why did he ultimately grab a baseball bat?
We're going to take a short break on that note. We're talking with James Ashby. He is an ex-police officer. He was arrested, which we'll talk about in a few moments. Tried and convicted for second-degree murder from a police-involved shooting and incarcerated for 8 years. You find him on Facebook. Look for Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. That's Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Of all the radio stations in the United States, there are no other shows like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And on Facebook, there's only one official page. Do a search on Facebook for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And be sure to like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. Return to conversation with James Ashby on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. James is an ex-police officer from Colorado. During his career, he was an officer-involved shooting. He was arrested, tried, convicted for second-degree murder, incarcerated to 8 years in prison, and currently in a halfway house. His best place to find him is on Facebook. Look for Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. That's Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. First of all, I got to say this, and when I left police work, I was physically injured and I was mentally injured as well. But one of the recurring dreams is bad shootings. And there is a distinct worry that, number one, you don't want to be involved in at all. But number two is you do everything right the way you're supposed to, the best of your ability at the time, and things go south. When did you become aware that all of a sudden this was become a criminal investigation?
I think when I realized things were going bad is when the investigating officers believed the statement of the female when she said that her cat hid the bat. And
she told the police that her cat hid a bat?
Yes, sir. So initially in the trial, they were saying the mother didn't do it. The mother didn't do it, which we can now prove that she did. But during her investigation, she told the officers, well, I didn't hide the bat, but my cat goes into the room. And, she said, I'm guessing the cat did it. And when they believed that statement to meet their fallacy of what they were trying to portray about me, I knew it was over. I knew that at that point I was going to get no fair shake, that this was not about right, wrong. This wasn't about an officer in fear for his life. This was about the media attention that people in that office were going to receive from going after a police officer. I mean, because you got to remember, I believe this was right about a month after the first shooting in Ferguson, Missouri.
Let me ask you an important
climate
question.
at the time.
Was the investigating officers, were they with your own agency or another agency?
Another agency.
All right. So here's what happens. In Baltimore, in my time, it may have changed now. If you were involved in a shooting, it was their homicide team that investigated you. And you were automatically a suspect in all the cases. It didn't matter if the guy killed 57 people. That didn't matter. They're still the victim. You were the suspect until cleared otherwise, and it is not a friendly environment. It sounds to me like yours was even more unfriendly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will say this. So, I mean, again, we're getting down the road a little bit, but one of the investigating officers had actually reached out to the DA's office before my trial and after I'd been arrested and said, hey, this guy didn't do anything wrong. You know, there's no evidence supporting these claims. You shouldn't be doing this. And the DA's response to the CBI agent was, well, we'll see what my jury has to say about it.
And by the way, I'm sure that they took you to a grand jury, because we used to say that was a coward's way out. And you could indict the Pope because you don't need evidence.
Right. Well, no, they didn't do a grand jury. They just charged me and ran through a traditional preliminary hearing.
So this guy who's the district attorney, I imagine he's elected position, he went ahead and made the decision based off, we'll just say, evidence that was not concrete to have you charged with second-degree murder.
Well, not only was it not concrete, it was fabricated. I mean, just intentionally fabricated. If you look at the evidence and what CBI said, for example, The DA said, well, Ashby was outside of the home. He shot this guy from outside the home, but your trajectory rod places me exactly where I was, within 1 inch, I'll say. The shell casings were found inside the home. GSR indicated
Which,
that
by
I
the
was
way,
about
for those who don't
4
know,
to 6 feet away.
That's gunshot residue tests. So a lot of people that are listening are not police. We say GSR, we say luminol, blood. They don't know what we're talking about. So I do know what you're talking about. And one of the things that we used quite often was the GSR test on people's hands. And
yes,
that was the standard test, especially if it was a suspected suicide. If it was a suspected suicide by firearm, there'd be gunshot residue on their hand, up their sleeve, if they're wearing long sleeves, all that stuff. So all the evidence was fabricated. And did you think, okay, I'm going to get to trial and I'll be free and clear?
Absolutely. Not only did I, but also my legal staff had said, because initially the district attorney's office has said, hey, what we're arguing in trial is whether or not a baseball bat's a deadly weapon. That's what this is the discussion about. So my attorneys are saying, well, clearly a baseball bat's a deadly weapon. There's case precedent for years that a baseball bat or a blunt object is a deadly weapon. It wasn't until closing arguments that they wove these weird statements throughout the trial. And it wasn't until closing arguments and the DA told the jury, he says, basically he accused me of hiding the bat. So when I went to my car to get my med bag, the DA said that I went to my vehicle, retrieved the large bag, I brought it back inside, and they said that I planted the evidence and staged the scene to make it appear like something happened when it didn't, which again, as we get longer down the road, I think you'll be infuriated by what we found in 2019.
I'm already infuriated, James, to be honest with you. Your story is tragic to begin with, but knowing that you were arrested, convicted, and incarcerated, I'm blown away. But people need to understand one of the things that I'll just go into. We'd arrest people with drugs in their pocket. Their reply would be, well, it's not my pants. It's someone else's pants. Oh, therefore not responsible. And certain state's attorneys would fall for that. And even though it makes no sense at all. This thing about in Maryland, I don't assume to know Colorado law, but in Maryland, if it was deadly, if they had a deadly weapon or one that could cause serious bodily harm, you were authorized to use deadly force. That was and by the way, you're also able to shoot someone if need be. They're a convicted, dangerous felon that usually committed in your presence, and you can't catch them. So the fact that you were arrested and tried, I would love to say, I'm not naive enough, James, to say in this day and age it doesn't happen. With politically motivated state's attorneys, district attorneys, yeah, I can see it happening big time.
Oh, I mean, it gets even worse than that. I mean, you look if we just talked about the things that happened with the jury during my trial. They caught the jury foreperson talking to the guy's family, passing notes, okay? Multiple people came forward and said, hey, we saw the jury and the jury foreperson talking with the victim's family during trial. And the judge said, well, we don't think it matters because, they presented their evidence. What process or jurisdiction is it okay for the jury foreperson to talk to the family or to talk to anybody in the courtroom? I mean, it was ludicrous what was done to me. It was this was not accidental.
We were sequestered as witnesses. We weren't allowed in a courtroom until we're called. That was standard operating procedure because he didn't want any chance, even any kind of implication that you had any kind of conversation with anybody. I'm shocked. And when we return to our conversation with James, we're going to talk about the conviction and the incarceration and how he made it through that and what he's doing about it today. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We're talking with James Ashby, ex-police officer. Did 8 years for second-degree murder. The best place to find him is on Facebook. Look for Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. That's Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. I really want people to understand this. In my mind, there's a huge difference between ex and former police. And just very briefly, former means you left on your own accord, under good circumstances. Ex usually is the other way around. You can decide whether James is ex or not, and whether he got a fair trial or not. If you want to be a guest on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, simply contact us. It couldn't be easier. You can send us a message on Facebook. Look for and like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show page, or email jay@letradio.com. That's JAY@letradio.com. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. I promise you, we'll be right back. Don't you hate when they do the bait and switch on you? When they tell you, check out a website, and it's free to go there, and then there's hidden charges? You won't find any of that nonsense at our website, letradio.com. It's free. It's always been free, and it costs you absolutely nothing. There's no hidden tricks. letradio.com. Check it out today. You can find episodes of the show as available as a podcast after airing on radio. They're always free, always have been, and always will be. Again, that's letradio.com, where it's always free. During a conversation with James Ashby, he's an ex-police officer from Colorado. He was arrested for second-degree murder for a line-of-duty, officer-involved shooting when he's a police officer. He was found guilty in court. He was sentenced to 8 years incarceration, currently in a halfway house. Best place to find him is on Facebook. Look for Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. It's Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. James, there's so much about this that's wrong. We can start at the very beginning, but they threw the hammer at you, and I'm sure you were devastated when you were convicted. Oh,
absolutely. They requested 48 years. They wanted to give me 48 years incarceration. And
it might as well have been 48 years, because you got 8 years, and I can't imagine doing 8 days. Never mind 8 hours.
That's, I think about my story. There's a lot of brightness and there's a lot of happiness in my story about my incarceration. So when I first was incarcerated, I was thrown in a jail cell. I was in solitary confinement for almost a year. I remember getting to a point mentally, I joke around about it with my little brother now, but I had a daddy long leg in my cell that was missing 2 legs, and I called him Lieutenant Dan. That's how alone I was, that I talked to a spider named Lieutenant Dan. But I remember thinking at some point, are we allowed to talk about spiritual things on the show?
Oh, yeah.
So I remember at some point in my cell, I was very upset with the Lord. I was like, God, I've served you. I've been a good man. I'm a husband. I'm a father. And I remember I was being very, very disrespectful. And I'm not going to use the words that I was using. But I remember it was after the jury, after we brought the jury issues to the judge, and he declined them. I remember just being very disrespectful and telling God, like, I believe you're going to take care of me. You're going to keep me safe. And something happened in my cell. So I'm sure you've been inside a jail cell and you've seen those massive industrial lights they have, those big, prison safe lights. So I was telling him, I remember telling the Lord, I'm like, if I'm going to be okay, you need to show me to my face and stop beep, 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 beep. I was being very bad. But I remember as I stood up off this broken cement pillar that was my seat where I had to eat at, and I took a step back, that light fell out of the ceiling, and it was so close to my face that I could feel it on my beard. And you would think that would terrify me, but it didn't. It was like right then at that moment, I was like, you know what? God's got me. He's going to keep me safe. He's going to protect me. And he did. I walked 8 years. I refused to go to protective custody because they told me, well, we'll send you to protective custody, but you're going to go to Alaska. And it was a joke in DOC. I remember the protective custody guy asking me that and telling me, well, we'll see if you get to see your kids then. Like, in their mind, I was a dirty cop, and they were going to put the screws to me every chance they got. And what's really strange about my story is, yes, the vast majority of prisoners, they wanted to do harm to me. But there was these moments of brightness and compassion within the prison community of people taking care of me and welcoming me in, guys saying basically, well, now you know what it's like from our side. And I remember being very confused by it, because here I am thinking police officers kind of just said, hey, we don't want anything to do with this. We don't want to get pulled into this mess. And then on the other side of it was people who had every right to dislike me, but showed me love. When my father died in prison, it wasn't police officers that reached out and said, "Hey, man, we got you." It was inmates that came to the cell and, said, "Hey, man," gave me a hug and said, "If there's anything I can do for you, let me help you out. Like, I get it. I'm here for you. I'll help you." And I knew while I was there that it didn't matter where I was at, what the world thought of me. I'm not a child of the world. I was a child of the Lord.
Right.
And I told myself, "Hey, man, I'm going to do the best I can do and help people the best I can." Because you've talked about it on your podcast before. When you're a law enforcement or you're a fire or you're EMS, you're military, you don't go to those jobs for the money. You're not going because the uniform looks good. You're going because you have a genuine love and compassion for people. And that didn't change. I might have been wearing an orange jumpsuit or whatever they had me in, but I knew that I could help
Please
people.
don't tell me it was orange. I think of the television show Orange is the New Black.
It depended on what jail it depended on what jail or what prison you were in. But it was orange, man. When you were in the Horge, it was actually orange. It's true.
I got to ask you this, James, and part of it is, and it sounds overly simplified, but there's really no other way of saying it, is I'm one of the good guys. And I take extreme offense when someone challenges that. And you start thinking to yourself, and look, by the way, in my mind, it's okay to be angry at God because you still have a relationship with them. I've had relationships with people where they're mad at me for years, and my daughters in specific. But as we've gotten through it, we're still talking to each other. So I get all that. But did you sit there and say, I'm one of the good guys? Why is this happening to me?
Yes. I mean, I would say yes. I never felt, I felt pain and I felt sympathy for what had happened, but in my heart, I never felt guilt because I was there.
Guilty
I know
of?
what happened.
What did you do that was to feel guilty about? In order for me to feel guilty, James, I got to do something that's guilt worthy.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying is I don't feel that I did anything that was worthy of guilt. But people like to squish guilt and sympathy or sadness together, and they're not. They're different.
One of the things, and I don't want to get lost in this conversation, that because we're going to go into where James is at now, what he's doing today, and it's kind of mind-blowing stuff. But there are state's attorneys, there are the news media, there are other people. They use facts, races of people involved as facts, but they're often not factors in why they occurred. And one of the examples I use is fatal traffic accidents. If it's a wet roadway, it's a fact and a factor. If it's nighttime, it's a fact and a factor. It does not matter what color skin is. You can't draw a conclusion based off facts of race. They're not often factors involving the use of force. End of story.
Yeah, I mean, when they started to come out with that talk and those things, I remember thinking to myself, my ex-wife now, but she was Native.
That's what I was going to ask.
My best friend is Native. I mean, it was very troubling to me that's their immediate pivot point was white cop, minority suspect, and I'm like, I remember thinking to myself, what does this have to do with anything? Why are you guys not asking
of the time
about
it
the
doesn't? And by the way, I don't know of any police, active or retired, that would think any other way. If they use excessive force on someone because they're a racial minority, got nothing to do with them. It sounds like you're a man on a mission. What are you doing today? Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page. What is the purpose of that? What do you do?
So what I'm trying to do and attempting, and poorly at best, because I was gone for almost 10 years, so me and social media don't really get along.
You got kind of an excuse, but by the way, that excuse is over. Now, James, you got a mission, so we're going to learn. We're going to learn fast.
So right now I'm trying to bring awareness to my situation so that this doesn't happen to other officers. I would love to clear my name. I would love for people to go there and hear my side of the story because, I mean, you haven't even touched the surface of just some of the crazy stuff. One of my biggest posts right now is in 2019, my brother found an audio that they accidentally, so the captain had called dispatch, forgot his phone, and there's a conversation between the DA, the ADA, the DA's investigator, and the captain of police, where they admit on scene that the mother told them 15 minutes after my shooting that she hid the bat when she saw my police lights, and that she was doing it to cover it up. And that's where we're at right now in my case, right? They have now admitted in court, okay, we knew all along that Ashby didn't hide the bat, but covering a bat up under blankets isn't hiding it. And I'm trying to bring awareness to the situation.
Where I come from, that's called hiding it. Maybe not well.
Well, I mean, I think cops have a general right is right, wrong is wrong, and I think lawyers like to get a little bit more into the mud than we do.
That's their job. And I got to cut it short. Can people find you on the Prisoner of War on Police Facebook page?
Yes. Yeah, please reach out. I mean, that's another thing about my page that's different is I will give you any piece of the case you want, any piece of evidence, any court filing. The DA's office still to this day will only tell their side. I want people to be able to see both sides and make their own conclusion that what. Well,
I'm going to throw out a little challenge before we wrap things up. They're welcome to come on my show if they have the nerve to do that. James, thanks for your service and thanks for being a guest on the show. I'm going to call you former police officer.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That means a lot.
A huge thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast version of the Law Enforcement Talk radio show, by the way, which is a nationally syndicated radio show. And we broadcast on over 115 radio stations across the United States to more than 44 million combined population. If you like our show, there's two simple things you can do. Go to our website, letradio.com. Add your favorites. Check it often. You can find episodes of the show right there. And the second one involves our Facebook page. It's so easy to find great content, including past episodes of the show. And when you see something that you like, that resonates with you, be sure to share it with your friends. We'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk radio show and podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.